I don't usually say this outright in the beginning, but for this video, I have to. What I'll be talking about in this video is probably going to be one of the most important lessons you'll ever learn as a young man. If you don't want to watch my other videos, it's totally fine. You can ignore all of them, though they're all really helpful too. But please watch this one video till the end, and I promise you, this is literally going to make or break your life. Before I move on to the story, I just want to say I did not pluck this learning lesson out from a random masculinity video online. This happened to someone close to me, and at first, I don't want to believe that such a person actually exists, but it did. And hearing about this absolutely broke me because of how this mistake has affected my friend and pretty much dirtied the views people have of men. So, a couple of years ago, a friend of mine met this guy in university, and soon after they've graduated, they got married. I haven't really heard much issues from them, except for the occasional complaints of the husband not contributing to do housework and all. We shall probably leave that story to another video in the future, as that isn't the main point of this video. Basically, I didn't hear any major issues from their marriage, and thus assumed that everything was fine. Not every couples are perfect, and each have their own unique issues, but there are some that I believe are universal and should be a mistake that must be avoided if we want to have a happy relationship. So recently, I got to know of this one issue that they are facing, or rather, what my friend is facing, and was absolutely disappointed and almost disgusted at the husband. Now, this is purely my opinion, so listen to it with an open mind until the end of this video. Apparently, since the very start of the relationship, they have been going Dutch on everything. Ever since they started dating in university, they will split their bills on food expenses and other miscellaneous stuff, which isn't wrong in my opinion since both of them haven't started earning their keep. In fact, I think that going Dutch early on in the relationship is a good test to the relationship for both sides, sieving out the gold diggers and freeloaders. I mean, that's a pretty blunt way to put it, but that's the way it is. However, here's the main dish. Apparently, they continued this Dutch practice even after they have gotten married. You may think that this isn't wrong, but you have to listen to the extent of it. So, everything, and I mean literally everything, was split into half. Bills, food, everything you can think of was split into half, and to make it more specific, was demanded to be halved by the husband. If they went out and eat a meal that cost $5 each, the husband would demand half to be paid back if he pays, down to the cent. Everything, literally everything and anything you can think of is halved. Doesn't sound bad enough? Well, if my friend goes over to his parents' place and eat with them, his parents would demand that they pay for their share. Imagine getting invited over to your in-laws' place and your partner's parents demands that you pay for the food. I mean, how does one even calculate and know how much to pay for home-cooked food? At this point, I wouldn't even be surprised if the husband's parents demand that my friend pays for each ply of toilet paper that she used when she's over at his parents' place. I would just like to reiterate, there's nothing wrong with going Dutch. And in fact, I strongly advocate it, especially when you are still studying in school and don't have an income. But I also believe that there has to be a limit to it, especially once you get married. Being together with someone, especially once you get married, is all about being in a lifelong partnership with someone that you love, sharing the happy moments and even the hardships together. But as much as the burdens are shared, each partner has their own roles to play, and in those instances, it's impossible to be halved. How do you halve the burden of pregnancy? How do you halve biological burdens and health problems? Can you transfer the pain of giving birth to your partner? Basically, you can't halve everything, and there's bound to be cases where one gives more than the other, and you have to be okay with it. It gets especially exhausting and emotionally draining when you have to be so calculative down to the cents and try to halve everything, especially after getting married. And when you do try to halve everything, those that can't be divided becomes a topic of argument and stress. When you're married, you're sharing your life and working towards a common lifelong goal, and keyword here is together. This isn't an argument for gold diggers to rejoice in. Gold diggers are just outright digging everything and giving nothing in return. But there's a huge difference between that and for the male side to have a provider mindset, and for the female side to provide through nurturing. I strongly believe that men should adopt the provider mindset, to work hard and provide financially to his partner. Could this be done differently? Sure. And it doesn't stem from the argument of traditional masculinity, but rather simply for each to play what they are good at. Men are just biologically built to be better at playing the game of modern day finance. In the past, it's hunting for food because of the stronger build that man has. But now, it's still the same, as climbing the corporate ladder requires personality traits that tilts towards the more aggressive spectrum, which is in huge contrast to the more gentle spectrum of females, where their personality traits are more nurturing, allowing them to dominate industries such as infant care or nursing. It's really all about playing to their own strengths and doing what they are naturally good at. If in your case, the female side is better at providing financially for the family and the male is better at nurturing, then sure, contribute with your own strength. The problem comes when you try to force everything to be halved, even at things that you are naturally not good at, which in this case happened to my friend. My friend wants to have a baby, nurture their kids, take care of the house, make food for her husband when he comes home from work. But looking at her husband, where he wants literally everything to be halved, makes her dread having a kid. It's not like she can halve the pain and burden that pregnancy comes with. Imagine having to deal with a huge belly, and the husband demands that she continues to work so that she can continue paying her part for the house. Thinking about how her husband treats her makes me shudder at how someone can treat their partner like that. I know that this judgment can be a little grey for most people, and I do admit it's difficult to split that line in most cases. But here's the thing, sometimes it's just so much easier to have a provider mindset as a man and expect nothing in return. Not asking you to take care of a gold digger, but if you are able to and it makes you happy, sure, I'm happy for you. But when you are able to play at your own strengths and provide what you are good at, and you are lucky to have a partner that also provides their fair share at things at which they are good at, such as taking care of your future kids, you'll find that your relationship becomes so much happier and fulfilling. To a certain degree, traditional marriages have way lesser problems, where a man outright just works and the female takes care of the house. There could still be some issues, but it's not as bad as current marriages, where some couples takes it a bit too far or allow social media to pollute the mindset, making them veer away from the traditional, and you end up getting shit like this, where the husband demands every single thing to be half that it becomes utterly exhausting for his partner. You can halve your expenses, sure, that happens to almost every couple I know, but you don't have to be this calculative. One day he can pay more, the other she can pay, it doesn't matter. But when you start halving the cost of the number of plies of toilet paper that your partner use, it's pretty much just marrying so that you can have a lifelong roommate and not so much as a lifelong partner. If you ask me what kind of relationship my friend has with her husband, that's exactly it. Not of a husband and wife relationship, but literally just roommates. Maybe roommate sounds better than it actually is, since I've known roommates that doesn't even go until this extent. My friend is pretty much at the point of contemplating divorce because she thought he'll change, but he didn't. She already knew that he was like that in the beginning, and it's clear that he was brought up that way. In a way, I'm being crude. She has to take ownership of her decisions when she said yes to him, knowing that he was like that from the start. But she isn't entirely to be blamed too, since her husband isn't acting like a true man, providing for her to safely play her part in the relationship. If I were to summarize the learning lessons from their situation, it can come down to a few points. Firstly, for either partner in a relationship, please don't be so calculative to this extent. There's a fine line between sharing your burden financially based on your financial situation, such as whether you are studying or you are earning significantly lesser or more than your partner, and just being outright calculative. Being so calculative also tells you a few things. Poor people are so calculative because they adopt a scarcity mindset and believe that every cent that is wasted will never come back. That's how poor people stay poor, because they are not willing to take risk. Rich people have an abundance mindset where they believe there's way more money out there and are willing to spend and take risks in order to get more returns. In short, please don't be so calculative. A couple of dollars here and there aren't gonna make you rich, especially when you are taking it from your lifelong partner. I'm also pretty sure this behavior is a complete turn off to the opposite gender, and you can't blame anyone if you are single. The second takeaway is to be willing to change. Being brought up a certain way by the environment or your parents would justify how and why someone turns out a certain way, but that isn't an excuse to stay that way if how you have been brought up isn't giving you good results. My friend's husband was brought up to be so calculative, and for some reason, even until his late 30s, he still thinks that it's okay to be that way. They had countless arguments, and the husband still thinks that he is right because his parents did it. I mean, no matter what your views are, there's something called compromising. Even if there's no right or wrong, both should be willing to give in and compromise to a conclusion that they are happy with. I mean, that's what partners should do, right? But no, the the husband didn't change for all these years, and it got them to where they are now, at risk of a divorce. The third takeaway is the importance of bringing up your kids well. And to put it in a more general context, if you don't have kids, is the importance of handing down the right values and being a positive influence to those around you. How you act and say can bring about a certain influence to someone else, and depending on what it is, can turn out to be either good or bad. My friend's husband's parents brought him up to be so calculative, and in turn impacted my friend negatively, and also didn't set a very good example of how a man should be. In a certain degree, it isn't entirely his fault, but also his parents. If you are going to be so calculative with your partner, you might as well just get a buddy and rent a house together. The fourth takeaway is to be a real man. There are several qualities that makes up a real man, and one of them is to embody the provider mindset and take care of your partner. If you ask why should anyone be a real man, to put it bluntly, you're already dangling 1 foot over the cliff. Look, as a man, I know what I want. I have all these goals that I want to achieve, all these things I want to attain, and I know that it isn't just me that wants them, but technically almost every other males out there. We all want to attain financial success, get a girlfriend, be respected by others and all. And if you think about it, if you are any less of what makes a true man, you never attain those goals of yours. In this context, if you want to get a girlfriend and most importantly keep her, you have to be able to provide for her and take care of her. If you think getting that couple cents back from her after you bought her a drink is taking care of her, you have to be out of your mind. Going back to the first story, being calculative does not make you rich. Getting back that couple of cents from someone else will not make you rich. Embodying the abundance mindset and believing that to get more, you have to give. That's what actually going to make you rich. So please, don't get married if you don't want to take care of your partner. Just get a roommate. I know there's way more to it on what really makes a real man, and of course, even making just one video on it wouldn't be enough, and instead, I feel would be best shared through several stories throughout this channel. The story that I've shared in this video basically talks about how turned off someone can be if they are so calculative, especially to this extent, and especially should not be done to your wife. It's up to you whether you want to do that to your dates, but please, not to your married half. There's two extremes you have to take note, one of them being this calculative, and the other will be to feed gold diggers without any sense of self-worth. Balance is always key, and it's up to you and your partner on how you can find that middle ground. Be a man, not a calculator.